Good evening and welcome to the Planning Board meeting for Monday, May 13, 2024, regular meeting of the City of Burbank and the Planning Board. Before we begin our meeting tonight, there will be one general period of public comment during the oral communications element, and there will be one public comment period, and there will be one oral communication. I'm reading this. Excuse me. If you would like to participate in the public comment period by making an in-person comment, please present a completed speaker card to the planning staff. If you would like to participate in the public comment period by telephone, please call 818-238-3335. I call the meeting to order. Will you please rise for the invocation, which tonight will be an inspirational quote by Anne Frank. Children are not only future, but also our hope for preservation of humanity. And I'll lead us in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, can we have the roll call?
Chair Rosati,
Here.
Vice Chair Wick,
Here.
Commissioner Monaco,
Here.
Commissioner Makatumian,
Here.
and Commissioner Bennett.
Here.
Do we have any announcements from staff?
No announcements from staff.
Okay. There is one public hearing item on tonight's agenda. Item number 1, now is the time and place for public hearing for project number 23-002678, a request to approve a variance to allow a 129 square foot trash enclosure to be in front of the convenience store in lieu of directly accessible from the abutting rear alley as required in Burbank Municipal Code 10-1-1113.1H on a commercial property at 2501 West Olive Avenue, G&M Oil Company, Inc. Before we begin, do any planning board members have any legal, financial, or other conflict of interest regarding this hearing?
No.
No. No.
No. Have any planning board members had any communications, including written, oral, with any person about this project?
No.
No.
No. Mr. Ramirez, have the notices by law been given?
Yes, they have.
And are there any written communications on this matter?
There is one written communication. I believe it's been included in your packet.
Will the representative of the Community Development Department please introduce yourself and summarize the matter for us?
Yes. Hello. Good evening. May I please have the presentation on the screen? Thank you. Good evening, Chair Rosati and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Sarah Hernick, Assistant Planner with the City of Burbank Community Development Department. This evening, I'm presenting a variance application for the property at 2501 West Olive Avenue. The applicant, Mr. Carl Hoy, is here tonight and will be available to respond to any questions the Planning Commission may have after this presentation. The project site is an irregularly shaped lot measuring just under a quarter of an acre, located at the intersection of Olive Avenue and Buena Vista Street. The site has 5 sides: a street frontage along Olive Avenue, a street frontage along Buena Vista Street, a rear property line along the curved rear alley, and north and south property lines. The site has been developed as a gas station since 1955. On the left is an overhead image of the project site, and on the right is an aerial isometric view, which provides a better perspective of the shape irregularity, which I will detail shortly. The project site is zoned Media District General Business, shown on the zoning map as MDC3, and a general plan designation of Media District Commercial, which is a land use designation intended to serve as a regional employment center consisting of a variety of media-oriented and commercial uses. The project site is generally surrounded by commercial development to the north, east, and south, and single-family residential development to the west. The applicant is requesting Planning Commission approval of a variance to allow a 129 square foot trash enclosure to be built in front of a new convenience store on a commercial property in lieu of being directly accessible from the abutting rear alley as required in the Burbank Municipal Code, Section 10-1-1113.1H. The proposed trash enclosure will meet the remaining requirements of this development standard. Shown here are recent photos of the project site. On the left is a photo taken from across Olive Avenue looking westward at the front of the site, and on the right is a photo of the rear of the site taken from the abutting alley looking eastward. This variance application is in regard to a project that was already approved by the Planning Commission in 2019, thus a brief background is necessary. Existing site improvements are set to be demolished and rebuilt as approved and conditioned by the Planning Commission's prior approval in 2019 of a conditional use permit and development review for project number 18-0001095. The CUP and DR approvals allow for the construction of a new gas station, including a new convenience store and fuel canopy, installation of new fuel dispensers, and replacement of the existing single-wall underground storage tanks. The impetus for this redevelopment is a California state mandate requiring all single-wall underground storage tanks to be replaced with a storage system that has a secondary containment and a continuous leak detection system by January 2025. The site plan shown on the slide was approved as part of the entitlement. Because the project site abuts a rear alley, the approved plan included a trash enclosure located at the rear of the proposed convenience store, outlined here in red, which was directly accessible from the abutting alley as required by BMC Section 10-1-1113.1H, which states, if the lot abuts an alley, the trash bin must be directly accessible from the alley. During the post-entitlement plan check review, an issue was flagged due to the lack of a 4-foot-wide accessibility path to the then-proposed trash enclosure, which is required by the California Building Code. Due to the irregular shape of the parcel, the operational components and requirements of a gas station, and the applicable local, state, and federal requirements, a site design that addresses all these constraints is not feasible with a trash enclosure located adjacent to the alley. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a variance to allow for a deviation from the development standard at issue. This is the proposed site plan with the revised trash enclosure location shown in yellow, situated at the northern property line between the front of the convenience store and the state-mandated air and water unit. Shown in green are the fuel pumps and canopy, as well as the access area for the underground storage tanks. The convenience store, shown in blue, is abutting the rear alley. The required parking is highlighted in orange, and the driveways are shown in aqua. Here is the plan of the trash enclosure, as well as the front and side elevations. The enclosure is proposed utilizing the same design scheme that the convenience store will use, including the same finished materials of textured plaster and stone veneer with a neutral tricolor palette. There are several features that create the lot shape irregularity and impact the placement of the structures that are proposed for the gas station use. These characteristics are unique to this site and are not found on similarly zoned and neighboring lots. The project site is comprised of 2 tied parcels and has 5 lot lines, 2 street frontages, 2 side property lines, and a rear property line that curves inward following the abutting alley. The intersection of Olive Avenue and Buena Vista Street creates a wide 117-degree angle at the front of the property, whereas a typical corner lot would have front lot lines at an approximately 90-degree angle. The irregularly shaped lot tapers from its widest width along the property lines fronting Olive Avenue and Buena Vista Street, which combined measure 158 feet, to its shortest width at the rear property line abutting the alley, measuring only 36.39 feet. Thus, the rear lot line is only 23% as wide as the combined width of the front lot lines. So whereas typical lot configurations along Olive Avenue are 4-sided polygons with front lot lines along Olive and parallel rear lot lines along abutting alleys, the configuration of the project site results in an asymmetric, truncated kite shape that is wide at the front and narrow at the rear. Additionally, both street frontages have wide driveways with curb cuts totaling approximately 50% of the front property lines, which is necessary for site access but restricts site design. Collectively, these constraints have resulted in physical limitations to the site design. In addition to the unique physical features of the project site, redevelopment of the site as a modernized gas station is further impacted by numerous local, state, and federal requirements, as well as operational requirements. A few key requirements that create site design constraints when considered with the physical characteristics of the site include, but are not limited to, the following and are highlighted on this site plan. Consistency with the Burbank Municipal Code and the California Building Code. Requirements by the Federal Highway Administration for site circulation of fuel delivery vehicles to access the site and the underground storage tanks. Requirements of the California Fire Code for fuel dispenser placement. California Building Code and federal accessibility requirements for the fueling area, the site design, and the interior and exterior of the store. Requirements for the state-mandated air and water unit, and parking and circulation for customers. Further details of many of these requirements are provided in the staff report. Of particular note is the requirement of a 4-foot wide accessibility path to the trash enclosure that is required by the California Building Code. A variance is a request to deviate from the current zoning requirements. This can be done when a property owner demonstrates that, under the prevailing zoning ordinance, a hardship which is out of their control and unique to the property prevents them from the full enjoyment of that property. As mentioned previously, the applicant was approved for redevelopment plans for a new gas station that included a trash enclosure directly accessible from the rear abutting alley as required by the current zoning code. During the plan check process, it was identified that the 4-foot wide accessibility path to the trash enclosure that is required by the state building code was missing and could not be accommodated. The irregular lot characteristics and regulatory constraints serve to deprive the applicant a substantial property right by severely limiting the amount of lot area where they can build, and specifically deprives the applicant the right to build with 0 setbacks as permitted in the MDC3 zone. Given the physical limitations of the site, as well as the regulatory requirements, the applicant is requesting relief from a specific requirement in BMC 10-1-1113.1H that requires the trash enclosure to be located so as to be directly accessible from the alley, and instead is requesting approval of a variance in order to locate it at the front of the store, where there is more space to organize and co-locate the necessary components of the gas station. Given that the open southerly portion of the site is the only area on the lot large enough to accommodate the required components of a modernized gas station while meeting regulatory requirements, the variance will allow the applicant to locate the trash enclosure to the front of the convenience store and build the store with 0 side and rear setbacks. Additionally, the waste pickup service currently accesses the site using the Buena Vista Street entrance, as it has for several years without issue. So while the intent of the development standard is in part to allow waste services to occur without interfering with business operations, with the granting of this variance request, the applicant would be continuing the existing service as it is now. Shown here is a side-by-side comparison of the trash enclosure locations. On the left is the approved site plan of the 2019 CUP and DR, and the trash enclosure outlined in red located behind the store directly accessible from the rear alley as required. On the right is the proposed location in front of the store outlined in red as well. The constraints and requirements placed on location of gas station elements to the front of the convenience store are identical in both situations and don't allow relocation of the convenience store. Thus, the only efficient location for the trash enclosure to be located is in front of the convenience store in order to accommodate the required accessibility path. As part of staff's review of a variance request, the project was reviewed for consistency with the Burbank 2035 General Plan, the applicable zoning regulations, and the neighborhood context. It was also reviewed for consistency with the required variance findings per BMC Section 10-1-1917 as detailed in the staff report and attached resolution. And the conditions of approval ensure the project's compatibility with surrounding land uses. As outlined in staff's report, it is staff's assessment that with the associated conditions of approval, the project complies with all applicable requirements. There are a few recommended conditions of approval to highlight. No retail items shall be placed outside of the convenience store in a formal or permanent display, nor in a temporary fashion. The applicant shall be responsible for maintaining the area between the rear wall of the convenience store and the public right-of-way free and clear of debris, refuse, and vegetation. And security cameras shall be installed at the rear of the building and shall remain functioning for the ongoing compliance of these requirements. The applicant will be responsible for preventing and/or addressing nuisance activity in a timely manner. Based on staff's assessment, the project qualifies for a categorical exemption from CEQA under Section 15303E of the CEQA guidelines for new construction or conversion of small structures, including accessory structures, as the action involves the construction of a new trash enclosure. There are no unusual circumstances that would preclude the use of this exemption. Public outreach for this project was done in accordance with BMC Section 10-1-1921, which includes a newspaper notice, mailed notices to tenants and property owners within a 1,000-foot radius, and installation of an on-site sign, all at least 10 business days prior to this hearing. Staff received one written comment inquiring how project plans could be viewed, which was provided as Exhibit I. Staff also received a voicemail in opposition of the project, with the caller preferring the trash enclosure in the alley. Staff finds that the project is exempt from CEQA, the project is consistent with the general plan, and the project satisfies the required findings for a variance. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the following resolution approving project number 23-000-2678, subject to the conditions of approval. A resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Burbank approving project number 23-000-2678, a variance to allow a 129-square-foot trash enclosure to be located in front of a new convenience store on a commercial property in lieu of directly accessible from the abutting rear alley as required in Burbank Municipal Code Section 10-1-1113.1H, and finding the project categorically exempt under CEQA based on the findings of fact and subject to the attached conditions of approval. This concludes staff's presentation, and staff is available for any questions, should the commission have any. Thank you.
Thank you. I now invite the applicant or the representative to address the planning board. You'll have a maximum time of 15 minutes to make your presentation.
Honorable Chair, members of the Commission, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Carl Hoy with Travis Companies, 4430 East Miraloma, Suite F, Anaheim, 714-693-9388. I thank you for the opportunity for this project to be brought before you tonight for your consideration. Over the past several months, we've had both the pleasure and the opportunity to work with various departments, specifically and more so the Planning Department. Again, we thank them for getting this project before you. We have received a copy of the staff report, the proposed resolution, along with all of the conditions of approval. We have reviewed them in detail, and we are in complete concurrence with those, with the staff report, with the findings and the conditions of approval that are being placed on this project. With that said, we respectfully request your consideration and approval of the project, and should you have any project-specific questions, I'd be more than happy to address them and answer them for you. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now open up the meeting to hear from any persons who wish to speak on this matter. Each person may address the Planning Commission for a maximum time of 3 minutes. For members of the public who wish to comment in person, please present a completed speaker card to the planning staff. If you wish to speak for members of the public that would like to speak by telephone, please call 818-238-3335 to address the planning board. Callers will be placed in a queue until all in-person comments have been received. The phone lines are now open. Please bear with us as we get the first few callers through. If you can please lower the volume on your TV or your computer when you're delivering your comment, that would be helpful. We have general public comment. Joel, are you speaking on this?
I'd like to speak on both.
Okay, so come on up, and then we'll have you speak at general.
Yeah, you know, I wish that we didn't make things so tough and so expensive for folks who want to do something that's so reasonable, that's all. But there was one of the conditions that you put on this project, and it was the first one, I think, that you were restricting the items, the retail items that could be sold on the outside. And I don't like folks to be, I don't want this applicant to be on to his detriment, while every other store is allowed to have things for sale outside, you know, retail items outside. Have you ever walked into Sprouts and they're selling little plants or watermelons or whatever it may be. And I can't think of another convenience store that doesn't have something for sale outside the front door, whether it used to be CD rentals or gas propane tanks, or there's always something outside these stores, it seems to me. Could be a vending machine for newspapers, all of these types of things. And I just don't want this applicant to be to his detriment because of this. And I don't want him to be in a lesser place than everybody else. That's all.
Thank you. Seeing no other in-person comments, do we have anyone on the phone?
No callers.
Why don't we give that a minute, and then we'll move on. No other callers. I now declare the public comment period closed. Would the representative of the Community Development Department like to make any further comments?
Just one comment in response to the speaker. Just wanted to assure the public and the commission that the requirement, which I believe is condition 11 in your resolution, that under the conditions of approval, is a standard requirement for these types of gas station with convenience stores. Most recently, the Chuck Mercer facility here on Brand and San Fernando had similar requirements. And that is because typically you have situations where product varies in the type of product, including the sale of alcoholic beverages and whatnot. And it's best to keep that area clean, and so that there's not an issue with loitering and other products, and especially when they have limited attendees inside the building. So this is a standard requirement, and we'd recommend that the commission keep that as a condition of approval.
And in response to the speaker, I'm assuming that everyone else is just grandfathered in. Whenever you go someplace and you see things outside, it's because they didn't have the conditions that were
Correct. As projects for redevelopment of gas stations and convenience stores, which happen a lot with the underground storage tanks and the leaching that happens, this is kind of more, as I mentioned, a standard condition that we've applied to newer projects as they come through the review.
Got it. Does the applicant or their representative wish to make any further comments?
No, sir.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for staff or the applicant? Mr. Monaco?
Just because I wasn't involved with the original approval, is there anything about this request, and also because I don't know what type of trash will be used here, if it's food related, anything that decomposes, etc. Will this affect any of the quality of life issues, i.e. smells, rats moving around type of a thing? You know, again, I don't know what kind of trash is being used here.
I think it's just trash. It's a convenience store, so there's going to be food.
There's gonna be food?
There's going to be cups and
And
sodas.
so changing the location.
Okay.
All right, I'm sorry.
If we may, Chair, just to recognize staff, the developer's here, and he could probably talk more in detail to the specific disposal of waste. But to the points you've made, both whether it's boxes, byproducts of what they sell, including food, those different types of containers
Yep.
would be located in there. But I think the applicant is here; he can provide you with more detail.
Well, I guess my really only question is, by changing the location of the trash, is that going to make any impacts on the approval, or previous approval?
Thank you for your question, Commissioner. Actually, it's staff's assessment that by relocating the trash enclosure to the front of the convenience store, it would actually be decreasing the nuisance of smell and if there are any rodents. I can't speak to that, but there is a single family a house across the alley, and by allowing this variance. And allowing the trash enclosure to be placed at the front of the convenience store, the convenience store would be able to be built from lot line to lot line, creating a physical barrier that would actually reduce the
Impact.
other nuisances caused by, typical gas station behaviors, including smell, light, noise of the gas station and the convenience store. It would actually create a barrier from keeping it from that residential area.
Right.
So,
Answer the question. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Mr.
I
Bennett?
just had a quick question. I noticed that the application for this variance was at the beginning of 2023. Is that correct?
I can't speak to when
I was just looking at, when I looked at the
Right.
application included in my packet, it looked like that it came in, and it's a 23 project, so I
Yeah.
assume that means it was a 2023
Yeah.
application. I guess my question was, it seemed like it's taken a while for this variance to come before us, and I was just curious how long it had taken and why that was the case.
Mr. Bennett, why don't we just focus on this, the variance, and we'll get to procedure at another time.
Okay, that's fine. I have no other questions then.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Seeing none, I now declare the hearing closed and the planning board will now deliberate. What is the planning board's pleasure? Ms. Wick?
I'd like to support the measure. I think that it's, with this type of project, it's really easy to get bogged down in specifics, but when you look at what the item is before us, it's about a trash enclosure. And I see no reason to deny it based on the findings of staff and the staff report.
I agree with that. My question really was, are there any changes? And it seems like it's actually a better positioning of the trash, so I'm fine with this.
Any questions? Any questions? I'm just going to simply say I agree with staff's findings. Obviously, there's not much of a choice we have here because it can't go in the back. The good news is it's completely contained, enclosed, and it's going to be finished almost, they're probably spending a fortune on finishing a trash enclosure because it's going to finish just like the exterior of the building. So I don't have a problem with it. If anybody wants to make the appropriate motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve project number 23-0002678, a request to approve variance application to allow a 129 square feet trash enclosure to be constructed in front of a new convenience store and not be directly accessible from the abutting alley on a commercial property at 2501 West Olive Avenue.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a second. Any more discussion about the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed and abstaining. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Now is the time for reports from city staff. Are there any reports?
There are no reports.
No reports. Now is the time for oral communications from the public. Any person speaking during this period may address the planning board on any matter concerning city business. Each person may address the planning board for a maximum time of 3 minutes. For members of the public who wish to comment in person, please present a speaker card to the planning board. For members of the planning staff, and for members of the public who wish to phone in at 818-238-3335 to address the planning board. Callers would be placed in a queue until all in-person comments have been received. The phone lines are now open. Please bear with us as we get the first few callers through. Please remember to lower the volume on your TV or your computer when addressing and delivering your comments. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers? Joel, did you want to come up?
Hey folks, I'm Joel Schlossman. I've been living in Burbank here for a minute, and I got 4 kids, and I've been known to attend 1 or 2 of these meetings in this room. If I haven't met any of you, thank you for your service. I'll tell you that same old joke. I'm gonna talk to the council and get them to double your salary. Look, the school board is putting a bond on the November 5th ballot. And I've been trying to figure if there's a nexus between this bond and anything you folks do here. And I've decided that there is. The bond itself is about 450 million, let's say, but it's a 30-year bond, and with interest, it's $1.1 billion. And I monitor costs of living in Burbank for everybody, and costs fall in many areas. Costs of development, costs of fees, and they're all seem to be passed down to business and residents, and that includes homeowners and renters. If a bond like this passes, it's going to cost more to live in Burbank, and the cost of this is going to be $55 per 100,000. So if a house is $1 million, which I don't think there's too many houses below that in Burbank, that's $550 a year times 30 years, so it's over $15,000 for every house. And if you look at it another way, there's 110,000 people. And you divide 1.1 billion by 110,000. It's $10,000 for every man, woman, and child in Burbank. So you have before you from time to time very expensive developments in the tens of millions of dollars. It could be hundreds of millions, really, because everything is so expensive. Like that development on Front Street comes to mind. So when you make decisions, please keep these types of things in mind. You know, I'm not going to go into why you should or shouldn't. I would never tell anybody how to vote. Well, maybe. But thank you for your time, and thank you for your service tonight.
Thank you. Do we have any callers?
We do not have any callers.
Okay, there being no further public comment, I now declare the public comment period closed. Now is the time for approval of the minutes from April 22nd. Have we had a chance to review those minutes? And if so, can we get the appropriate motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
We have a motion.
I second that motion.
Second, any discussion on that? Seeing none, please signify by saying aye if you agree.
Aye.
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 Opposed? And anyone abstaining? Seeing none, thank you. Now is the time for introduction of additional agenda items. Planning board members may introduce new items for discussion, but no action may take place except to put it on a future agenda. Do members of the board have any items to introduce? None? Okay. Now is the time for city planner comments. Are there any comments from the city planner, or maybe you want to address Mr. Bennett's question?
Sure.
Or you can take that offline.
No, we
Whatever.
can clarify. So the application did note it came in January of 2023. It actually was part of a caseload of two planners at the time, and Sarah, who was here, was recently assigned it in the last 6 months. So during that period, the project has been going through plan check, and they've been attempting to try to resolve the issue with the trash enclosure. However, all options were exhausted to the point where we basically had requested that the variance submittal be turned in, see if we could come up with a solution that didn't warrant it. But the reason it was here before you tonight was because we couldn't. And I guess in essence, that's the proof in the pudding of the need for a variance, is we tried all other options during the period of time from when it's submitted to now to try to come up with a plan that met the requirements of the code. More often than not, that takes some time. I've had some variance applications and some single-family residential projects in the past that have been a year or two in the making. As we go through the process of amending the code, like we did for R1, where we improved the review times by up to 70% reduction in time.
Yeah, so we were,
Yeah.
at one point, we were at 24 months on single-family homes, and what are we at, 9?
Now we're probably closer to 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so on this particular issue, though, it was interesting. I was reading the code before the meeting just to kind of see, and it's pretty much referencing kind of a default that says, if you're abutting an alley, place the trash enclosure towards the alley. But the reality of it is looking at all those properties around there, everything is single-family residential. And as you know, in other times, we have situations where if you're within 200 feet of residential, we require a higher level of review for you because we want to reduce the impact to the neighbors. So I think as we're updating the immediate district specific plan and others, this is one of those things that I want to take a look at because we should actually create more buffers from the single family residential as opposed to the way this was designed. And with the irregular shape of the lot, kind of it's what it is. But good thing is council has approved additional staff and the caseloads are now coming down and things are starting to get processed a lot quicker. So we anticipate that we'll have way better improvement on processing times for you all. And I think it's just a work in progress. But yeah, this particular one was unique because we were in plan check. When the issue arose, we told them to submit the variance, but with the intent of trying to find a solution that wouldn't get us here. But here we are.
Very good. We will now adjourn to the planning board meeting on Monday, June 19th, 2024 at 6 p.m. The meeting will be held in person in the city council chambers at 275 West Olive Avenue. The public is invited to attend the meeting or they can view the meeting online. The public will be able to provide comment in the following three ways: in person or by leaving an e-comment or by calling 818-238-3335. Thanks everyone for your participation and good evening.